Okay, Bertha has spoken. This is sort of part two. If you're like tuning into this, then the first part was more esoteric, spiritual dimensions of some important stuff. And one of them is your breath, and the other one is your consciousness. Like when we're aware, we can actually pray to be more aware. And that's what I call a root level prayer. A root level prayer is to pray to be awake. Because if we're asleep at the wheel, all our tools of consciousness are not available. Why? Because we're unaware. It's that simple. So what I call it now is one of my teachers says at some point for all of us, it's all grace. It's 100% grace. And I'm kind of fast approaching that in my world. It's like, I cry of the grace of grace now. I'll lay down and just be like, oh my God, this is there's this beautiful light. And when I close my eyes, sometimes there's just this beautiful light. And Donna DeLore has a line. She was the old backup singer for Madonna. I did a Facebook post about it. There's a line in one of the songs that triggered this memory in me. She said, beautiful light with me everywhere I go. And that's literal, because that's my experience now. I keep driving my car in the dark and turn and go, why is there a fucking bright light behind me? And there's no bright light. And the other night I was like, what's Ian turning on a spotlight over there for? And I'm like, oh, there's that fucking light again. And it's one of those phenomenons, that we have on the path. And there's strange phenomena that's going to get even more intense, because so most important thing is we're in a very powerful part of the Milky Way galaxy too, folks, where our solar system is. They're not revealing that, of course, because NASA is sort of a lie, and then the flat earth people, I don't know what they would think about all that, but I could kind of like, there's a bunch of theories running, like, Middle Earth. Like one of my friends has a theory that the North Pole, as you approach the North Pole, you go into the Earth. And as you approach the South Pole, it's inverted, you go out into the universe. I'm like, that makes the flat earthers happy. That makes the whole galactic it's all one thing happy. I'm like, that's kind of the master theory, dude. I was like, I really like that theory. Wow. Like it's a fractal, the earth is like this, you think it's this ball, and it is kind of, but then if you go to one side of it, you go into this other universe inside of the earth. There's apparently a sun, and they had maps of this stuff in 1500s. I've seen the maps, like, how they in 1500? I thought they were morons back then. No, history is a bunch of bullshit. And then going the South Pole, that makes the flat earthers happy, because then you get to this ice wall thing, and maybe that's what they've done. I don't know. They say as you approach the South Pole, you end up getting this big ice wall. It's like, Game of Thrones plays on that. The big ice wall, Game of Thrones. You see it?
No.
I think it's a metaphor for this, making the flat earthers maybe one of the flat, anyways. So one of the things moving forward into this extremely more and more tumultuous times is that grace of just being awake in the eye of the hurricane where everyone else is sort of freaking out, because hysteria never leads to anything good generally, because hysteria is usually because of a long-term set of programming, propaganda, rhetoric that's been put upon the people for so many generations now. People are disconnected from the divine. But the old yogis 100, 200 years ago, they knew the West was going to destroy the world with their materialism. So fortunately, they sent yoga and all these gurus over more than a century ago. And now, as the Lakota tribes used to say, now 7 generations later from the slaughter of General Custer and all that, that the native ancestors have woken up through the white men. And that's my experience. I had like native chiefs speaking to me when I was down in LA when I was in my late 20s going, okay, I'm losing it.
You mean by contrast, they've awakened?
I'd be driving and I'd have these natives going, metal box on wheels. I would have these conversations. And then I worked in this big metal building, and then it's like rivers of steel. I hear these like native conversations in my consciousness. And, if I didn't have the guidance I did, they would have had me in a box with a fucking straitjacket and shit. I would. That's what happens is you lose your mind. Rumi talks about it all the time with the friend. You lose your mind. Because the circumstances we've agreed upon, all these concepts around us, is not the way the world really is, and it's actually inverted. And that's why so many people that are sensitive get twisted in knots into these strange psychotic tendencies because one of the old Essene cultures, subcultures, believed that when you were born, they grieved, and when you died, they celebrated. They did it all in reverse. They did not celebrate at birth. They grieved at birth, and they celebrated when you died. Wow. Talk about a re-inversion.
So that would explain the death thing, being excited.
You were talking about that earlier, weren't you?
Yeah. Last patient, I said, I'm so jealous. And he wasn't weak, but he sat up like this of me. I said, yeah, you get to get out of here. It gave him a whole new perspective.
That's really important, because if you leave with even a little bit of that, then I've been down a few of the bardos on the other side. Life is a bardo, but they don't talk about that. Like, I didn't read the Tibetan book of the Tibetan book, the Book of the Dead. I read the Tibetan book written by a different Lama called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And they talk about the bardos in that, but the point that he's trying to make, I think I'm representing this well. I don't remember the author's name, but one of those big Rinpoche dudes. He said the bardos are presenting themselves in life. In other words, our imbalances, our samskaras, our karmic tendencies that we've come in with, and we're in this sort of. You add in the Native American Castaneda's teacher, the northern Mexican Indians, some of the tribes at least. There's this energetic shell, and they represent it as an egg. I don't see that. Like when I sort of like can unfocus and go into auras, it's more like different color layers, and they present in here as different densities. And I just hate the word chakra, but down the bottom is very dense. At the top is pure consciousness, and then there's fire and water and air and sound and light, and so that's been, you talk about a most important thing. My daily, for more than 2 decades, maybe 3 decades, that was my daily Shavasana aligned corpse pose, was to scan first chakra, second chakra in the body, to non-judgmental, just check in. What's the energy of light today? What's the energy of sound today? Air, fire, water, earth. And it's like a densifying, right? It gets more dense as you go down, and it gets less dense. And that's one of these teachers calls in one of the energetic breaths. Dense to not dense. The second energetic breath is to be at one point in space, and then the other one is to be sort of everywhere. That's a continuum. So you could be a tiny little dot and as dense as a black hole, or you could be as big as the universe and not dense at all. And then the third energetic breath is a continuum from a point like the earth up. And so we can be down at the bottom, very dense, or down at the bottom, not dense at all. So that's where the human thing comes in. It's one of the great secrets of life is plants are inverted humans. Their brains are in the earth, right? So their chakras are reversed. Their sex organs are flying in the air called flowers. Our sex organs are at the bottom in the dense part. Their sex organs are up in the light part. Their blood is same as ours. What did he just say? Chlorophyll and hemoglobin, identical, folks. Only difference is iron and magnesium. So actually the best form of magnesium, that's one of the great secrets of the solution that we're going to go through on the second part that we're going to keep less than a half hour, I promise, folks, is your best form of magnesium, that's one of the greatest secrets of life, is green juice from greens, whether it's wheatgrass or comfrey or plantain or kale or whatever. One herbalist I really admire, I'm not going to name him, but one of the quotes out of his book says, "I don't like pond scum." So I'm going to non-glorify chlorella and algaes. In my world,
it's green.
Spirulina is warm and damp. Chlorella is neutral. Blue-green algae is cooling. That's the way the spectrum that Paul Pitchford actually put it in his book, Healing with Whole Foods. So I found spirulina to be too damp forming and undigestible for most people. I found chlorella to be much more useful. And then blue-green algae, there is like the excessive, like the lumberjack type of guy with the big red nose and the loud voice. That's a blue-green algae person. But a vegan who's already deficient, I don't know that like the Klamath Lake blue-green algae is the best idea. So in theory, I like the idea of it. It's just that there are some humans that have evolved into being able to utilize that. For the most part, though, most of us in this older blood type O, the most ancient blood type, like I got to have meat. You know, I have to come to terms with that. I'm eating raw liver, and I mean, one of the best ofs, folks. Raw liver. It's in a teriyaki marinade, but what can I say? The evidence is, what do you feel the best when you eat? And most people have never really given themselves a chance. Like, I was so abhorred by the idea of raw meat, I lost my mind. But I read about it and studied it and went outside the mainstream and went, oh my God, that's how they're curing the C word. I write the C word now, C answer. ANSWER.
Yeah.
That's how I get away with it now. Like, C answer. The C answer. And the C answer is live green juices was Max Gershon, and his I'm not doing it justice. I'm sorry, folks, but if you're really a Gershonite. But one of the three things I took away, which I take away simple stuff to remember stuff because there's so many of them, is wheatgrass juice, raw liver, and coffee enemas. That was the trifecta for cancer therapy. So if you look at that trifecta there, so we've been going through the green juices, you get the magnesium, you get the chlorophyll. You know, what is chlorophyll, folks? There's this thing in the plant called a chloroplast, Plast, chloroplast. And the chloroplast takes light and makes shit out of it. What did he say? Yeah, there's a cell in plants that it makes sugar out of light. And guess what? Part of the vitamin C complex called ascorbic acid is one molecule removed from sugar.
Wow.
So you can make ascorbic acid from GMO corn syrup in China. That's what they've been doing and calling it vitamin C for decades.
And selling it to us.
Well, Linus Pauling said, and I'm sorry, Pauling, you Paulingites, so you don't got it right. Ascorbic acid never cured scurvy. That was a lie, because the guy who won, the Shorgy guy, the original vitamin C guy, he had in his notes, you cannot cure scurvy with synthetic ascorbic acid. And that was just like Pasteur. It was the lie. They ran with it because you can make ascorbic acid out of cheap sugar. See, you can make tocopherol out of cheap GMO canola, soy, whatever. You see the little game they were playing, you know. That's probably another strike right there. But at this point, this will all be posted elsewhere because I own the material and I'm just posting it, right? I can post it anywhere I want. So the truth will never die. So that's one of the secrets, folks. If you start looking into like the history books, and so one of the most important things then is anything live and fresh, like the macrobiotic trifecta is fresh, local, organic. Organic should be a given, but we have to say it because most people don't get it. But the more chemicals, the more particulates you have in your body, what happens to water when you start throwing rocks in it and mud in it? It starts getting kind of thick. And then do thick fluids circulate well? No, they don't. That's a secret to life. So the more you take in, you've got to be able to process. I mean, you take in anything synthetic that goes against nature, anything, there's these wrong-headed molecules called D-isomers or isomers, ISOMER. And it's one of the secrets to viruses and stuff too. It's one of the great secrets of exosomes is that these wrong-headed molecules, like, you know, you go to the story by L-glutamine or L-tryptophan. What does that L dash thing mean? That means levo-rotated, L-E-V-R-O, levro-rotated molecule. So it has a certain chiral spin. Like, oh, Inga and Pingali, you know, the two spinning DNA helix. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about like helixal energy. So one's going down, like that's what a low pressure is on the earth. It's ascending counterclockwise spinning energy. That's what a low pressure is. So it makes the air very unstable. And that's how it rains. And that's what they're doing is they're capping the atmosphere with those trails, what they call contrails, but it's more than that. And then the storm can't lift, and so there's no rain. So high pressure is clockwise air spinning downward. And what's been over the Bay Area now for years is a clockwise spin. When you have a storm moving in, there should be a counterclockwise. And I watched that last storm. It was all clockwise around the edges. So they chop it up. They beam this clockwise energy down on the counterclockwise, and that's why the storms are so intense, because it funnels in all the energy in this tight little band of atmosphere, a few thousand feet, makes everything wind higher. It's crazy making. And I feel it that's how I know. And anybody tells me it's not going on after 11, 12 years, it's like, I'm like, I don't care. I don't need you to believe me. It's dangerous. We need to all come together and stop it. But, you know, we don't know how this epoch's going to turn out, you know. Even Adyashanti said, I'm not invested in the survival of the earth because there's always going to be life. And we just get attached, you know, like, when the earth blows up. I tell my friends, if there's a tsunami coming, I'm grabbing my board and heading for the beach. I'm going to ride that bad boy. There's 1,000 feet of water coming at me. I got my board. Okay, speaking of the ocean, that's one of the next tenets is iodine. One of the great secrets to health that, it's been demonized. And I saw this endocrinologist cite the Wolff-Chaikoff study out of UC Berkeley, which Dr. Guy Benjamin refuted many times in his life, who was the iodine expert. And the Wolff-Chaikoff study was a refuted, it should have been taken off the record because it was strictly done with a very tiny amount of rats, and they did it to demonize iodine so they could justify killing us and slowly wiping out people's thyroids. So when you look at thyroid hormone, T3, you see, and T4, people are like, well, what's that mean? That's always my question. That was the why guy, you know. Most people don't even know what that freaking means. What's T3, T4? You don't know. I do. It means tyrosine, which is a common and essential amino acid, bound to 3 iodine molecules. So if you demonize something that the body requires and tell you the RDA is at least 100 times too low for optimal functioning, there's the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, is what the minimum is. Then I have the ODA, which is the optimal daily allowance, which is 10 milligrams of iodine a day. Most people are getting, that's once you do the loading. Because you have to load, this is a David Brownstein's work, which I think is the best for anybody because he's an MD. You know, David Brownstein has a book about iodine. That's where I got a lot of my work. And then we'll give credit to also to stopthethyroidmadness.com. I referred a client out today about that. Very good website. Tells you how to read your own lab work and gets you beyond all this holy baloney they tell you in the doctor's office. You just can't believe what they're telling people. Like, I can take any endocrinologist. I challenge any doctor out there. Come on, put it out there. I'm game. I'm going to challenge any endocrinologist to come talk to me, and they will learn at least 10 new things in the first 10 minutes from a conversation with me about what they don't know, what's been buried, and they weren't taught in medical school. Who is the father of modern endocrinology? I love this dude. I have his book over there. Henry Harrower, Harrower, Henry Harrower. Thank you, Henry Harrower. He took like cow organs and pig organs, and so we would feed people pineal glands and then measure their blood work and see how they changed. Well, that's kind of a smart idea. Feed them pancreases and thyroids and intestines and all the whole organ. Like, he has his endocrinology book I have down there. He's the father of modern endocrinology. And he has the chart of how all the endocrine organs affect each other. You would think he would want that, right? No endocrinologist has heard of this dude that I've talked to. None. Zero here. And then this is the guy that did the pioneer work of endocrinology. But he was doing it naturally with animal organs versus with. So this endocrinologist was talking to this client of mine and said, oh, you have Hashimoto's. And Hashimoto's, you have to have 2 antibody titers above normal. She only had 1. So lie right there. I ruined her credibility within 5 minutes. I'm like, let me see that paperwork. Credibility's ruined right there. She's saying, can't take iodine. I'm like, then why did Dr. Lugol, when Lugel's iodine was invented in 1840, from 1840 to 1970, before the Wolff-Chaikoff study came out, why was that the treatment of choice for any low or high thyroid condition? Tell me. Why? And why suddenly in 1970 did it become horrible for us? It's pathetic corruption is what it is. So yes, if you're really in a bad, if your antibodies are elevated in your thyroid, iodine needs to be treated, yes, with respect. And I'll tell you why. Because if you get too much circulating iodine in your body through the liquid Lugol's, then it's the largest nutritional molecule that can enter your cell. It's like having a Jupiter and all the other molecules are the size of Earth. It's gigantic. So imagine it's like, well, if you're having sex, think big one side, small the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, it ain't going to fit, right? So it requires a special escalator to enter the cell, which requires nutrients. So this is one of the secrets. It's called the Symporter system, Symporter. Anybody that knows anything about endocrinology will cite the Symporter system in iodine. The Symporter system has to be built for a few months in most people's bodies so they can get iodine into the cell. Because if the iodine doesn't get in the cell, it starts circulating in the body, then you have a low thyroid effect that will be aggravated, which is generally, if you have fatigue before, you will have catastrophic fatigue on too much iodine in your blood. Because it's putting the signal out like, hey, TSH, you can shut off. The whole system kind of goes haywire because iodine also wipes out, it's a major killer of pathogens and major chelator of heavy metals and stuff. So the body starts going into too much detox too. And microbes start dying. And then what happens? Cells start dying. And you have dead cells and dead microbes. And guess what has to clean that up? The lymphatic system. So when I take too much iodine, I get a sinus condition. Because that's the drainage. I have a lot of toxins in my nervous system from, I don't know, 10 injections in each arm from age 5 to age 15 every week. It adds up to 18,000 allergy shots, which did no good. It's a miracle I made it. 18,000 shots. So, this whole upper body has got some stuff going on. Because they were using thimerosal, all that mercury stuff. And so, I take clay constantly, zeolite in low doses. It's the best way to chelate, to slowly get it out, to not damaging. Because what happens is you pull mercury out of the head from amalgams, and guess where the next stop is? Oh, the thyroid. So it's a common thing. People do mercury detox, and then they have a Graves' disease or a hyperthyroid condition. But mercury was once called an excitotoxin, the Mad Hatter disease. So the process is speeding it up. Well, it's sped up. They were going to remove one of my clients' thyroids going through mercury detox. Oh, Graves' disease, your TSH is 0.001. We need to remove your thyroid and radioactive iodine and kill the whole thing. And I'm like, no, you got get out of here, you ignorant ramuses. We're going to help the drainage process, what we're going to do. Because he would wake up in the night with a rapidly racing heart, nosebleeds, classic hyperthyroid signs, right? And I'm like, yeah, but we know you got mercury in there, so we're doing the right stuff. It's just one of the dentists removed 8 mercury teeth, and he did the right procedure, but he did 4 and then 4, and the correct way is to go 2, 2, 2, 2. Doing 4 at once, no matter how good you are, there's going to be mercury gas off. Well, then the major source of it's gone, but then you're still dealing with the gas off, no matter how good you are. And then we're trying to get it down and out. And so the correct way is to do it slowly. So the zeolite's very, the standard process GI adsorb, all non-abashedly, my full script account, which is available on my website. It's the best place to get the things I'm talking about. And then you win because you're saving money going directly to the source, and I win because I get passive income from it. It's just it's not income. When you buy from me, you are buying from a private membership association. So we need to add that in too. It's right there on my website. There's a statement of fact on the bottom. We're not a business. We're an essential. Health is an essential. Why is that? Because I've declared it. That's my law. So if you want to interact with me, you go by my law, which is you are a member of my private membership association by inference when you buy from me. Because I don't take income. You're a member. Okay, so we're going to exchange commodities or whatever you want to call it. That's the way of the new world. You want to know how much money I'm making? I'm happy to tell you how much profit I'm making. Complete transparency. What a concept. I'm buying that for 5 and I'm selling it to you for 8. I'm making $3. You got a problem with that? Let's talk about it. That's what I like about going to Tijuana when I was a young man. Like, you go to Tijuana and everything was a negotiation, right? You want to buy that. I got this blanket over here. Awesome. Yeah, it's like, but that was the art of negotiation, right? So it's banter. Could be fun, but yeah. Anyways, so iodine, and the easy start with iodine is seaweed. There aren't very many. Ocean water fish will have a certain amount of iodine, but iodine's a very unstable element. It wants to evaporate. It's amazing. I've worked with elemental iodine in it. When making Lugol's, you have to get it, and they don't sell it in the States. You have to literally order it from overseas. And even then, it's I guess they make crack or some drug with it. So they, it's just so ridiculous. That's why I don't sell Lugol's in this country, because people will take the Lugol's and they'll break it down and then they'll make whatever drugs with it. And they ruin it for the rest of us. But there's also another element like the demonization of iodine. Oh, now we can add chlorine to the water and bromine to shit and fluorine to shit. And those all chelate out iodine. So this escalator thing, The Symporter system requires B vitamins. I'm going to generalize. Requires vitamin C. Requires at the minimum zinc, magnesium, and selenium. Back to that. Is that all of it? So what I do is I get people on a 2 or 3 month loading protocol where we're just adding in all these nutrients to build the Symporter escalator so they can get that big fatty inside the cell, you know, because it requires that special equipment that most people don't have built up anymore because they're nutrient deficient. And we have a B vitamin epidemic of deficiency out there, folks, because you can't buy those synthetic coal mining waste B vitamins and expect you're going to heal because they're not B vitamins. They're a chemical fragment of this moving complex that has moving parts to it with enzymes and stuff. And they're giving you this coal mining waste, USP, pure grade stuff that has therapeutic value, no doubt. But as a long-term solution, no, it has the wrong-handed isomers. Why? Because it's made in a laboratory, which means there's going to be the wrong-handed version of it floating around, which is going to clog up your lymphatic system. It's like throwing dirt into a water stream, right? It makes it thicker and sludgier, and nobody talks about this. But there's your viral stuff. All these wrong-handed molecules turn into wrong-handed entities. Frankenstein cells. Think about the inverted universe. You've got the universe that's normally spinning like this, but then you have this other universe spinning right next to it, the opposite way. All underneath our noses, and we don't even talk about it. Yeah. David Stewart in The Chemistry of Essential Oils. Thank you, Mr. David Stewart. It's right over there. The Chemistry of Essential Oils. Subtitle, God's Love Manifest in Molecules. He's a bridge like me. So I'm going to be teaching a chemistry class next year. Folks, if you want to watch it or be a part of it, it's the chemistry as process. And as David Stewart presents it, his premise just blew me away 10 years ago. Cells in our body aren't reading chemistry. They're reading frequencies and energies. And we've agreed upon this chemical CD4 protein receptor bullshit when that's not how it is actually working on that level. I think our cells care about what we've conceptually labeled it as. That's not what's actually happening. It's like saying you're an idiot. So when I say you're an idiot, we know you're not an idiot. So what I'm really saying, I'm announcing that I'm an idiot for saying you're an idiot. Right? So it's like, well, it's all a projection. See, we project onto everybody else what we don't want to own for ourselves. But the external in Jungian psychology is showing us what we're avoiding internally. Anything presented externally is an internal avoidance over a period of time. So God's trying to get our attention. Hey, you're not paying attention. If that cancer you got all over your body, you're not paying attention, maybe. You know, I tell people are blown away. I tell them you got cancer of the soul. And they go, what? Yeah. Cancer of the mind, cancer of the soul, cancer of the psyche, cancer of the body. They're all reflections of each other. I can only say that with authority after 30 plus years of doing what I'm doing, right? So then once that, back to the Symporter, then once that escalator is sort of built, then according to Brownstein, he's tested like hundreds and thousands of people, and it's like 99% of Americans are, you know, deficient in iodine. And I think in Japan, and some of these cultures that are more by the sea, they're on the average consuming 10 milligrams of iodine a day. That's how I got that figure. And there's a certain amount of seaweed that translates to that. And it's just like a, you know, it's probably like this cottage cheese container. You gotta eat about this much seaweed a day to get 10 milligrams of iodine. It's just too much. That's why I recommend going to the concentrates like Lugol's, because then you don't need to eat all that seaweed, which the carbohydrate and the protein in seaweed is related to blue-green algae. They're the same family. They're seaweed's an algae, believe it or not. So we're not set up for that necessarily, some of us. I mean, when I was in my age 25 to age 32, I was training my body to eat seaweed because I would just get liquid diarrhea when I would eat it. My body was like, I don't know what the fuck this is. Flush it through. I don't know what this is. Flush it through. That was my body's way. I never constipated. My body doesn't like something. And, no, let's just flush it through. And 2 hours later, I'm like, I just ate that 2 hours ago. Oh my God. Like grapefruit, my body hated grapefruit. It would be in the toilet 2 hours later. Like, how does it go that fast? It's like a racetrack. Like 2 hours, like, because normal transit time is 24 hours. And that's 12 times too fast. It's like going at 90 miles an hour when you should be going 10. You know, but that's another secret, folks. Chewing 50 chews a mouthful. Everybody hates to hear that. And that's how you break down your food, because you don't have teeth in your intestines. And then the other one is bowel transit time is 24 hours. So it's well established over many decades. I'm not going to argue it with anybody. If you're eating 3 meals a day of any substance, then 24 hours later. So that's why when you watch animals that are healthy, they eat and then they go poop afterwards, because the stomach fills up and that presses against the intestines and puts pressure on it to expel the feces. In a healthy human too. As I got healthier, that's exactly what happened to me. Is if I'm running well, which is, sitting at a desk doesn't do that. You need to be moving to have that kind of bowel movement, and then having enough rest and a balance of rest and movement. And but that's the highest level. Is you eat breakfast and you poop out yesterday's breakfast. You eat lunch, you poop out yesterday's lunch, and then you're not building up toxins from the fecal matter. That's called auto intoxication. So if you're not having at least one bowel movement a day, then you're backing up waste in your body and it's going straight up into the liver. Ooh, one of the secrets of life, auto intoxication. So I'm not going to argue this again. Like I'm telling you, this is my report of 30 years working with this. It's not research. It's reality of working with thousands of people. So that's the reality of my own life too. Like I became who I am because I turned my intestines inside out. I mean, I had stuff come out of me that I was always considered the healthiest person of anybody I know. And I have pictures of stuff, space egg aliens. Look at this egg came out of me. When it came out, my whole body went, it's like a woman having a claw, It's like, that wasn't a poop. So I go, gross, fish it out and be like, nobody's going to believe this. So I took a picture of it. There was a little jellyfish thing. And I didn't want to open it, I was poking out with a chopstick, and this voice in my head said, do you really want to open that thing up and see what's inside there? And I'm like, I probably don't. Until alien comes out. Like not even a pleasant thing down the toilet.
In Germany, they have flat things so you can see, it's a different kind of John. It doesn't just go down.
The Bourdet or the Boudoir. Or...
Where's that?
In Germany.
Oh, they have a special
squatter. Like you have a squat.
Flat.
And then you have a little rinser. There's a little hose you can rinse yourself off down there. Bidet, yeah, bidet.
So they could examine their poop.
Right. It's one of the great secrets of learning. And poop isn't waste. It's a resource, just needs to be composted.
Yeah.
With all the nitrogen in it. When you watch animals, the other animals poop, we think of it as gross, but in their world, it's like a Snickers bar.
Oh, I mean, they eat it?
Because it's already digested stuff. So in their world, it's like, I got a couple of my people were doing urine therapy, it's like, it's free, and urine has benefit and used properly,
Amazing.
It's, one of the other secrets that one of my previously pregnant women told me is that amniotic fluid is basically urine.
Wow.
Oh my God, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But we've been programmed out of all this. There's all these miracles. And so the next miracle, we're going to move away from iodine. Oh, so if you have 2 or 3 months on this special protocol, please don't try and do this on your own. Come and see me. You get $25 a month, 15 minutes. I can guide you through that iodine loading. And then you load iodine from, I was taught 30 to 50 milligrams for 2 years. And at some point you'll have a detox. I had a bromine detox, and it's bromine because there'll be fluorescent yellow stuff coming out of you. And I heard stories. I got this presentation I can send to anybody. The story of this one woman, she said she was about 18 months into her iodine loading, 30 to 50 milligrams, and nothing had happened at all. And she's like, that's great. And then, but after 18 months, she noticed there was these yellow stains on her sheets, and her white sheets. And her dog slept in the bed. She started blaming her dog for urinating, but it wasn't the dog. It didn't even smell like urine. So she finally just took it into the lab, and it was like, this is bromine. And she's like, and then one night she saw it oozing out of her breast. This bright fluorescent yellow liquid.
Wow.
Her body had taken that long to gather the resources to naturally push out the bromine through her breast tissue. And mine came out through my lungs. It was like literally this mucus came out of me, and it was glowing in the dark yellow. And I was like, it was about 12 or 13 months into my own load. And I was like, I knew this was coming because I know it. I'm full of chemicals, and it was like, I wish I could get some pictures of that. fluorescent, you can imagine it was like turn off the lights, kind of glowing kind of shit. It was like radioactive waste. Like, wow.
Where did the bromine come from?
I have lists for this, folks. So I have Analytic Research Labs, arllabs.com. They have some resources there. But I have resources in my office too that, yeah, I have a list. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think brominated anything. So there's brominated bread, swimming pools. I mean, think about all the chemicals that are around us. So even if they're in our kitchen, down under the cupboards, generally, even in my world, that's discouraged because they're still getting into the air through the plastic. On some of them, there's some porousness. And then those other elements are, again, they cause thickening in the fluid stream because there are more molecules we got to deal with, right? You want a pure, clean fluid, plasma, blood, lymph, right? You don't want all these foreign things in there floating around because that's causing it to thicken up. And so iodine's a blood thinner too. I'm going to run through this because I am over the half hour now. Is boron seems to be another miracle molecule. And Walter Last, L-A-S-T, has a paper called that I've had for a couple decades that Paul and Juji gave me, if you know those folks. The Borax Conspiracy. It's great. It's still on the web. I have it in my, many of us have got it archived because we don't want to lose this document. But he was using common like laundry borax, which is simply mined out of the earth in the mountains here in Visalia, apparently, Lodi. And so it's like 99.9% pure sodium tetraborate. So it's basically sodium and boron is what borax laundry stuff is. Very strange. And turns out this molecule may have some value with the thing going around, you know. Be careful what I say. May have some value for chelating, the iodine and the boron. That's why I'm telling you guys, everybody, this is there's some evidence they could help break up the stuff that's in the stuff that people are doing for the cold and the flu, we'll just say. But as Walter Last said, it balances calcium and magnesium balance. It's antifungal. It's a laundry solvent, and it kind of like, it's like a detergent, so it cleans stuff. So it's a cleaner of cells, so it's definitely going to clean out waste. It balances estrogen and testosterone and progesterone, apparently, was one of its functions Walter Last cited. And there was one other one I'm forgetting. Maybe it was cell membrane health, but it's like, wow, who doesn't want that? And what you do is you take a teaspoon of the 20 multein borax, that's simple, put it in a quart of water, quart of cream there. And you got a teaspoon of boron dispersed into a quart of water. And you take a teaspoon of that liquid, and that's about 3 milligrams of boron in that teaspoon
per day.
That's a good start. And you can work your way up to tablespoons worth, and then you can probably stop at 3 or 4 tablespoons. I loaded up to about 3 tablespoons and started having some candida symptoms.
I just took it straight. I just put my head off the ground and go,
I wouldn't do that.
no.
I had a woman that took me literally and took a teaspoon of borax, which that's how you know it's safe, because she took a whole teaspoon of laundry borax and got hives all over her body. And I'm like, I told you a teaspoon in a quart of water, and a teaspoon from that quart of water. I don't know how you could misinterpret that to a teaspoon straight in your mouth. Oh my God. No, she took the teaspoon in a little bit of water, thinking I'll just get it down in less water. And it was like, oh my God. So that tells you that what they call the LD50, or the lethal dose. 50% of the lethal dose is less than refined salt. So refined salt is more poisonous than laundry borax. Wow. Right. Literally says something. So that's another miracle one. We talked about the green juice. So the best way to get magnesium, that's another, like, so you got your if you can't get 20 multein borax, I guess boron, there is this boric acid. There are supplements out there. Just trying to think in nature, like, God, where else would you get it? I don't know. But in today's world, especially if you're in the Western countries, or even, probably throughout the world, you can still order like 20 multein borax. And just think of the borax molecule. And then there's some like roach killers that some people use for I guess it's also a roach killer, but I'm not going to recommend, like one of my friends used it. It's just like boric acid. But it was like a laundry, like a roach killer thing. And I was like,
Put it in water and let it drip.
no, there's like a concentrate that you use around, you sprinkle it around. I guess they eat it and then it messes them up. So I've covered everything. Oh, your best form of vitamin C is a raw plant right out of the earth. Your best form of vitamin A is liver and egg yolks, and any kind of grass-fed animal fat is your best form of vitamin A. The other secret is beta carotene. The carotenes and the lycopenes are not vitamin A. They're water soluble and need to be converted through the liver to fat soluble vitamin A. And that's why you see people with yellow and orange pigmented skin. That's a form of jaundice caused by a weak liver that's not converting carotene to vitamin A. I can see in the sclera or the whites of the eyes. That's why I read whites of the eyes, because I can see the subclinical jaundice is what it is. But it's just carotenoids, the orange, yellow pigments red pigments building up in the body. Everybody has it to a degree. Like I'm pretty good these days. My hands used to be a little more orange than they are now. That's why people do carrot juice. Their skin turns orange. They can't process the orange pigment fast enough. Let's see. Juicing is another secret. Fasting is another secret. If I'm ever stuck, that's what I would end up doing is if you're on the edge, you don't have a high vitality and you fast, then you're in the hands of grace. And maybe it is better to exit in some cases, but fasting is generally the cells start to sort of regenerate after 3 days. Yogananda wrote about it in the 30s. The University of Bombay had a study on it in 1933 that the cells, when you start fasting after 3 days, the cells start to spontaneously regenerate. They talk about autophagy now, AUTOPHAGY, autophagy. They talk about, autophagy after 3 days, and they think they're like figured something out. It's like, they already discovered this 100 years ago, and the yogis knew thousands of years ago. You little arrogant science baloney, thinking you actually discovered something when you're labeling something that they already knew about thousands of years ago. Arrogance, the apex of Western civilization. And here I sit drinking my tea in my entitled little room here. I love it.
Coffee.
My white supremacist attitude over here. I was white supremacist, all your white people are white supremacists. I think having your breath, if you have cramping, I just coached a client through that. When you have a spasm, especially if you're resting and you got muscle cramps, leg cramps, restless legs, is secret to take a deep breath and hold it in as long as you can, and then exhale and then hold it out as long as you can till you're literally gagging, and then inhale slowly, hold it in until you're literally gagging. And after at least 1 or 2 rounds of that, there'll be a significant relief of the spasm or the cramp. And that's the body learning to recycle CO2. It's like putting into science what we kind of knew through the yogic pranayama breathing traditions years ago. That's another great secret, is managing your pH through holding your breath a little bit and letting the acids build up in your bloodstream. Because being more alkaline, that's what it is. It's an alkaline nutrient lockout on the muscle level, and the calcium kicks in and it goes into the tetany because magnesium relaxes and calcium. That's how the muscle fibers work. Calcium causes that. Magnesium causes relaxation. Same thing in the bowel. Calcium constipate, causes the bowels to cramp up. Magnesium causes the opposite action, a relaxation of the bowel. So you want to balance. Like some people have cramps and magnesium doesn't help. And I've told them, just take a little bit of calcium lactate. Like one client took one little tablet, it's only like 30 milligrams, but that's what's finally stopped her muscle cramps. I was taking 900 milligrams of magnesium, and just 2 constipates her and 1 doesn't, because of the effect. That's why the muscle testing thing works. People are muscle testing for dose now. Like you want 1 tablet, 2, 3, and their arm falls, and it's like, okay, 3 it is. And I'm like, wow, kinesiology has some really cool stuff. So I think that's enough for tonight. You guys didn't have anything, did I address anything that you wanted before we get off the air here? Was there anything else you guys wanted addressed? Vitamin D from sunlight, by the way, that's another most important thing. Cod liver oil, vitamin D. Some of the small fishies are high in vitamin D. But don't let that 25-hydroxy D thing fool you. It's messing with your mitochondria. It's messing with iron metabolism. So liver was the other one. We didn't touch on the coffee enema, but just to finish that off, most important thing was from the Gershon work was the coffee enema. The short word for it is I call it liver dialysis. How do I know that? Well, that's a pretty audacious claim the guy's making. Well, I know that because I had a client who was dying and we were keeping him alive with coffee enemas. And how do I know it was working? Because he went to Dominican and died in 3 days.
Oh, mackerel.
Not getting coffee enemas. He died of liver failure. So it is only a small sample size of one, but I've guided probably at least 400 or 500 people to do coffee enemas, and some people they don't work for. I had a woman with like chronic pelvic pain, and it really messed her up. And she had bought like a year's worth of visits. And you know who you are. I'm really sorry if you ever watch one of these, which I doubt she would. But it was like, the remedy is, if something isn't working, then you do less dose and less dose and less dose, and because coffee is a great solvent and it has a lot of properties that are very good for the portal circulation of those veins from the intestines back to the liver that get contaminated. And I had a client that did an MDMA, a Molly enema years ago, and it's like, yeah, that probably caused some weird stuff in the bowel.
How
It's
about
probably,
wheatgrass?
yeah, green juice. I'm a big fan of. I do comfrey myself because it's a cell proliferant.
Indiana.
Yeah, I do comfrey juice enema from comfrey greens just when they're in season. Like right now, it's out of season, so yeah, wheatgrass would be a viable option this time of year. For a green juice enema. But then there's nettles, and you would think nettles juice. Well, I puree it in the blender and then run it through a strainer. And by the time you puree nettles, and milk thistle greens and chickweed, those are all growing right now. Marshmallow, mallow, malva, M-A-L-V-A, malva is growing right now in the first rains of the year. The young field nettles, or the Turkish nettles, they're called. They're not the ones by the stream, the big nettles. These are like, they only grow a couple feet. The farmers markets, they sell them here locally. Very nutritious. Parsley grows this time of year. You might get a little bit of time out of cilantro this time of year. Generally, it's sort of failing.
So we're taking enemas here.
Any of these can be made into enemas, yeah. But I do mine where I puree it with water in a blender. Even if I buy wheatgrass, I'll put the wheatgrass in a blender with water, blend it, let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes, and then blend it really quick, a couple pulses, and then squeeze and strain it out through a wire mesh strainer. And then I'm getting everything out of the green that way, because my wheatgrasser, which I have, there's a lot of leftover juice in that pulp, and so I figured throw it in the blender with some water, or even apple juice, like apple juice wheatgrass. That's fun. Or you do celery juice and throw the wheatgrass in the celery juice, and apple celery wheatgrass. That's another delicious one. So you don't have to juice with the juicer, folks. If you have a blender, just add some water to your fruit and veggies, blend it up as best you can, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then squeeze it out manually through a strainer. And I call that a blended juice. See, I'm a MacGyver of nutrition, right? Because I grew up, I wasn't rich. It's like, I don't have a juicer. What am I gonna do? Oh, I could blend this shit together. And then greens don't juice well because they're low water content anyway. So by putting them in water, you're getting more nutrients out of the green. There are some of the extreme raw foodists that say when you blend it, you destroy and distort the proteins and the molecules, and that's a great argument. But then I would counter him with, and then why did the guy using the worst juicer in the world, apparently, the guy with fat, sick, and nearly dead, he came over 100 pounds overweight. He lost 50 pounds in like a month, drinking only juice and traveling around the United States making a movie about it with this rotary blender that apparently damages the juice. So I'd say, as an empirical evidence, I'd say, you theorists over there with your extreme omega juicers and have to do it with the slow and don't damage everything. Well, you're not correct, because I've seen hundreds of people use these other juicers and still heal. Bottom line is they're still healing for less price. So it's all this subtle ego stuff. Look at my expensive omega juicer. You little peon over there with your little champion $300. I got a $900. You got a $300 juicer. People, this is the spiritual one-upmanship.
I know.
I'm more enlightened than you, I'm more yang than you. This is the word is contamination, spiritual contamination. I just have to use that. You're contaminated. I'm for sure contaminated. I just know I'm contaminated, so I get to have fun with it. I'm contaminated because my contamination is my dharma. That's the secret. It's just a self-judgment, right? It's not contamination at all. It's just a convenient word to use to have fun with it. All right. Oh shit. Now I'm up to 50 minutes on this part 2. Manic rant. Yeah, I was on that. A little bit of mate. I guess another secret is have a balance of the catabolic substances like stimulants and relaxants, because too much stimulation, one of the signs of nausea is too much stimulation, too many stimulants, too much waking time and not enough resting time. But to make it through kind of what is happening, you know, the iodine and the boron are really important. Green juices, fresh plants. And then unfortunately too, folks, raw meat is one of the answers. Not that fake meat stuff coming out. Don't do it. Insects are debatable, you know, sure. I think that it's viable. I wouldn't do it culinary wise, but I guess apparently there is some value.
What is fake meat?
Well, what they're doing is they're getting the stores are I'm hearing them all over the place. Meat's disappearing from the stores, and then they're filling the shelves with fake Beyond Meat, I guess it's called. And guess what it is? Gluten burgers used to be called seitan in macrobiotics, and refined soy products. So they're going to turn people into these monsters because protein's made into connective tissue, protein's made into neurotransmitters, protein's made into cell membranes. Like it's made into everything, because carbohydrates aren't made into anything except energy.
Yeah.
And then fat goes into your cell membranes, and they put fake fats in that. What do you think's in the what do you think's in that? Nanolipids. That means fat that's been nanized, you know, right through your cell membranes. Well, that sounds kind of scary. The X-Files had this keyword for disclosure. They called it the black oil. And the black oil would get inside you. And that was in the 90s. And I think that this thing is the black oil, what they referred to. Now, Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files, was interviewed numerous times, and he's like, this isn't made up because I just had to fictionalize it, but this is stuff that I actually experienced and saw. Those are quotes from Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files. Well, he was in Area 51. It was well known he was in Area 51, but we never know what these people, if it's true or not. But I had this like resonance with the X-Files, like not the horror ones, but the alien human hybrid ones, and the super soldiers, yeah, especially bred soldiers. There's some weird stuff around this planet that I get intel on that I don't even share with you guys or any of you, because it crush your soul. Things that I have to hold that I hope aren't true. Like the super soldier thing's another one. I hope this isn't true. All right, folks. Fear is another one. Fear causes low immunity and low oxygen in the cells. And what do you think the media has been purporting on people for generations is fear? So the only thing to fear is fear itself. So how do you overcome fear? With willpower. That's how.
Low oxygen in the cells, and what was the other one?
Low immunity.
Low immunity.
Yeah, these are like NCBI, NIH studies. You can go look this stuff up. It's like that's what Batman was. Batman had the Joker and the Riddler, and they always provided a joke or a riddle giving a clue to the crime. So those entities running the world, apparently they have to karmically give us clues as to what they're doing. Well, okay. I don't necessarily believe in that, but so that's the thing, is if you don't believe in your own thoughts, beliefs, and opinions anymore, you're definitely free. So I can have my thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. It's like, oh no, there's that rerun. I don't believe that one, but we can still have fun with it. Yay.
But then are you believing somebody else's?
Yeah, right. Okay, folks. Good night. If you have any ideas on most important stuff, some people are taking NAC for some of this stuff going around. Some people are doing, glutathione. If you have actual results to share, that's what I'm interested in, not somebody's study. But I'm just telling you what's been working for people generally. And I'm not really citing studies because I don't need to, because again, empirical evidence is science. And we'll go in the evening with that.